Welcome to the Rural Futures Institute at the University of Nebraska. I'm Chuck Schroeder. I'm Executive Director of the Institute, and this is Catch Up with Chuck. You're in for a treat today. I'm going to introduce you to a really interesting fellow that is a myth buster. Bill Udell is a rural Nebraska kid who is absolutely shattering the myth that young people from Nebraska have to go to the Research Triangle in North Carolina or Silicon Valley in California to be a part of the tech revolution. Bill, welcome.
I appreciate you inviting me. I appreciate you calling me a kid. I'm not sure that my children would agree.
Well, we're all kids here.
Okay.
Yeah. You're one of the freshest thinkers that I know. So listen, and I want to set the stage right from the start. You've been a key player in building a successful, very interesting enterprise here in Lincoln called Don't Panic Labs, where you have been part of software development, corporate innovation, but also colliding tech innovation with business principles and launching a number of now successful tech-based companies that are all about problem solving. So, Don't Panic Labs has really emerged as a great Nebraska success story, and I want to hear your side of how this all happened because it's a pretty fun story.
Yeah. Well, it kind of starts about 8 years ago. Nebraska ranked 52nd out of 50 states, which is hard to believe, but it was actually behind Puerto Rico and DC in venture capital. There just wasn't any money out there to create new software-based startup companies. And there also weren't any software engineers that really had a expertise at taking things from kind of vision to version 1. So we kind of set out to solve that problem. We raised a fund, a $38 million venture capital fund called Nebraska Global, and then started training software developers to take things that are an idea and move them into software. And we had some real great success with that, and we're really proud of the companies we created. Companies like, things that aren't household names, but we're proud of. Beehive, they do asset management for municipalities, and Elite Form. They use three-dimensional depth sensing cameras to track weightlifting bars in three-dimensional space, which sounds like a lot of big words and jargon, but what it really does is it allows trainers in weight rooms like the University of Nebraska to track the performance of their athletes. So they can actually watch the bar and see just how much velocity an athlete is using when they're lifting the bar. And that technology is now in most Division I universities and professional football and soccer and rugby. U.S. Navy SEALs use it. So it's now a product and a company that is infiltrated internationally. So we're proud of the things that we've created there.
Well, you've covered such a broad array of problems that you and your team have been willing to jump in and try to solve. Well, listen, one of the reasons that we wanted to have Bill Udell on Catch Up with Chuck is because you're a rural success story yourself.
Oh, geez.
Now, Burwell, Nebraska is rural by anyone's standards, I'd have to say. So listen, it's always interesting to our audience to kind of know where people come from, their upbringing, what caused them to have the kind of vision and energy that they're investing in creating a better future. So I want you to tell the Bill Udell story.
Well, that's a long story. It all started now. So you're right. I was born in Burwell, Nebraska. But my story and who I am kind of starts a couple generations ago. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. He actually started a business in Holdridge first, before starting Udell Feed and Supply in Burwell. My dad was then also an entrepreneur and small business owner. He kept running my grandpa's feed store, Udell Feed and Supply. And that really shaped my worldview, having them be entrepreneurs. And then my dad took it a step further and became incredibly active in community building around Burwell. To his last day, he was one of the biggest advocates for the city of Burwell. Anybody that would ask him would hear a glowing story about why they should uproot and move to Burwell, vacation in Burwell, live in Burwell.
It's the key to every thriving rural community we know.
Yeah. So, kind of having that as my root, that civic pride, that's never really left me. So I've kind of carried that with me. I've carried it into Lincoln. Everything that I've done with Nebraska Global Don't Panic Labs has also had a sense of civic pride, Nebraska pride. That's fed into the desire to have Nebraska Global be more than just building companies. It's about building Nebraska. We want to make us competitive on a national stage, and I think that comes from my grandparents, my parents, and now it's in me.
It is. That's the legacy.
Yep.
That's the legacy. Well, listen, when you and I met, you'd heard something about the mission of the Rural Futures Institute. I had heard a bit about the success of Don't Panic Labs. Our mutual friend Rich Clausen with Prosper Lincoln, who's one of the great connectors, I think, in our culture,
Yes, sir.
said you guys ought to get together, and I'm so grateful that he did. But listen, I want to get to the heart of your vision for taking the success that you've had with Don't Panic Labs and Nebraska Global. One of the first conversation you and I had was about your vision for taking that success model and taking it to rural communities.
Yeah.
Not shoving them behind as though they don't matter, but this mission that you've just described. I want you to talk a little bit more about that vision, Bill, and what you think could happen.
Yeah, it's a complex vision, but it's something that we think we can see some success that we've had in Lincoln repeated in greater Nebraska. There are a lot of folks who have really great intentions and they want to come back into rural communities and try to help. What we think we've figured out, though, is a mechanism where we can find, those handful of entrepreneurs. And by the way, those entrepreneurs are not the typical entrepreneurs you might think of. We look at people that are raising cattle, farmers, people that are running businesses in small towns. They're entrepreneurs and they need to start thinking about themselves that way. And we see an opportunity where we can come in and use our expertise in creating product, creating startup companies to take an idea, get it off the ground. But one of the secret sauces we've figured out as part of Nebraska Global Don't Panic Labs is also this training aspect. Typically when we partner with a company with the things that we've done in Lincoln and Omaha, we also offer education. So people can actually learn how to become the software engineer who can support the software ongoing. And that is a key differentiator, and we believe it's going to be a key differentiator that can help us grow greater Nebraska. So we see it as an opportunity where we can find those entrepreneurs, help them grow a company, help them train resources, and actually create businesses that are viable in greater Nebraska that can then thrive and grow and continue to build upon themselves. And I think that's a bit unique. It's a bit complicated, but I think in every town, every town's got 2 or 3 or maybe more people who are just ripe and ready for
Creating
this.
problem solvers and don't quite know how to turn that into something.
Yes.
And you do.
And we believe that we've figured out in certain scenarios exactly how to take those things and turn them and create viable businesses.
Well, listen, we had an interesting discussion earlier this week. You and I had a chance to get together for a cup of coffee and connect some key colleagues. Doug Durham with Nebraska Global and Don't Panic, one of the more interesting guys I've met for a while. We called in my buddy Dr. Tom Field, who's the director of the Engler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program, which we've discussed often here on this program. And we talked about a number of collaborative opportunities. But I'm going to tell you, I was especially touched when you and Doug talked about the importance of intersecting, colliding, I think is actually the word you talked about, high-tech sciences with the humanities in building a successful enterprise. For those of us at the Rural Futures Institute, our big, hairy, audacious goal is a thriving, high-touch, high-tech future for rural. And so I thought, man, you're talking our language here. And so I want you to talk a little bit about how you at Don't Panic Labs see that intersection and why it's important.
Oh, geez, I don't know where to start with that one. I mean, the greatest successes that we've seen over time have come when someone with no particular technical skill bumps into somebody from our world who has some technical skill. And we see this pollination of ideas. We call it collisions. We love to see the collisions between the non-technical and the technical. And to back up just a hair, we're tending to create people who are very siloed in how they think about the world, how they see the world. You go to school and you specialize very tightly around computer science or software
Sometimes
development.
learning more and more about less and less.
Yeah,
And,
and you become very deeply knowledgeable, about a specific subject, and that's great because it enables us to do some really cool things with all those different areas. What it does, though, is it also prevents a little bit of the aha moment from happening. So what we like to see happen is the collision between people who have very different skill sets and can bring together these aha moments of, wait, you can do that with software, and I have this idea around how to monitor cattle to see if they have a bacterial infection. So when those two people collide, we see new product. And then we know how to put some energy behind that to actually create new business out of that new product, and that's tremendously exciting.
Well, I have to tell you, in that conversation, I think Tom and I both walked away saying, here are some really capable tech guys that, by the way, are just fun to be around.
Oh, geez, appreciate that.
So I know that it's Doug had said that, one of your priorities is attracting people to your firm that, yeah, you're always needing engineers, but by the way, you're really interested in finding those folks with the people skills, the humanities foundation that helps make this universe of talents really work. So
Yeah.
I think that's very exciting, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to get together with you. Well, listen, Bill, we're going to run out of time in a little bit, but it's just been such a treat over the last couple of months to get to know you, to get to know your company. And I have to tell you, I so hope that the Rural Futures Institute and Don't Panic Labs have the opportunity to join hands around some of these things, because you're difference makers. And I think you just bring a very different energy to the notion of what a successful rural community might look like. We say around here all the time, it's a no fairy tales deal. There has to be genuine economic opportunity generated in a community to make it work. And then the whole entrepreneurial environment touches all kinds of things, from healthcare to education to entertainment amenities and all that sort of thing. So
Yes.
anyway, we're delighted to be acquainted. Anything you'd like to add this morning?
I feel the exact same way. I think there's a real opportunity for, a relationship with the Rural Futures Institute to lead to some really interesting creative endeavors for sure. Really, really excited for the potential of that. For the audience that's out there, if you're an entrepreneur, we would love to hear from you. And if you don't think you're an entrepreneur, but you've got an idea, we'd love to hear from you. We genuinely want to start to get out into greater Nebraska and start making a difference. And so if you have any ideas of how to do that, we're all ears.
If you've ever had a more important message from Catch Up with Chuck, I don't know what it would be than hearing from Bill Udell and his team, that kind of invitation. Bill, this has been a real treat. Thank you for joining us.
Yep.
And folks, I just encourage you to stay in touch with the Rural Futures Institute through our website, through Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and all of those tools that are so important. Because we're going to be back in another week talking with real people about real places, demonstrating that thriving rural communities are a legitimate best choice for worthwhile living. Thanks for joining us.